Welcome to ECO351, Study Session 8, Foreign Exchange Market. Introduction. Exchange rate can make domestic product expensive or cheap in the world market. By implication, exchange rate can reduce or increase current account. This means that exchange rate has a strong influence on the current account. Exchange rate also affects capital account because it is an asset price. In this study session, we will examine the determinants and the roles of exchange rate in international trade. Learning outcomes. When you have studied this session, you should be able to 1. Explain the concept of exchange rate. 2. Discuss the forms of exchange rate. 3. Highlight the major characteristics of exchange rate market. 4. Analyze the major forms of foreign exchange regime. Concept of exchange rate. Each country has a currency in which the prices of goods and services are quoted. The naira in Nigeria, the cedis in Ghana, the pound sterling in Britain, the peso in Mexico, the yen in Japan, euro in Germany, and dollars in the United States. Exchange rate allows us to compare the prices of goods and services produced in different countries. A consumer deciding which of the computer system to buy, for example, must compare the price for, say, Dell or Toshiba in Nigeria. But assuming that the consumer wants to consider buying Dell from the United States, how can he compare its price with Nigerian-made Toshiba? He must know the relative price of naira to dollars. This relative price is what is called exchange rate. Therefore, exchange rate can be defined as the amount of domestic currency that a unit of foreign currency can exchange for. From our example, let us assume that Dell computer is sold for $1,000, while a Toshiba is sold for 150,000 naira. Assuming that transport cost is 0 and that Toshiba and Dell products in Nigeria are of good quality as that of the US. To know which computer to buy, we need to know the exchange rate of naira. Assuming that the current exchange rate is 140 naira, then the US Dell type in naira value will be $1,000 times 140, which will give us 140,000 naira. This implies that it is economical to purchase US Dell. Now let us assume that exchange rate is 160 naira. Clearly, it makes sense to purchase the homemade Dell computer because the US-made computer will now cost 160,000 naira. We can learn at least 2 lessons from this simple analysis about exchange rate. First, exchange rate is used to determine whether or not to purchase home products or foreign products. Second, when exchange rate rises, imported products become expensive, and when it falls, imported products become cheaper. The general formula for exchange rate is given by exchange rate equals unit of domestic currency divided by unit of foreign currency. In the case of Nigeria and US, it will be naira divided by dollars. Exchange rate can also be perceived as a unit of foreign currency per unit of domestic currency, that is, dollar over naira. Changes in exchange rate. depreciation and appreciation of exchange rate. In equation 8.1, when the unit of naira rises in exchange for a unit of the dollar, it means more naira is needed to be given in exchange for a unit of dollar. In this case, naira is depreciating. When the unit of naira is exchanged for dollar falls, equation 8.1 tells us that less naira will be given in exchange for a unit of dollars. In this case, naira is appreciating. In equation 8.2, an increase in the unit of US dollars to be given in exchange for a unit of naira implies that dollars is depreciating in relation to naira. Conversely, a fall in the unit of dollars for an exchange for a unit of naira means that dollars is appreciating. In particular, when the exchange rate rises in equation 8.1, exchange rate is said to depreciate, while when the exchange rate falls, exchange rate is said to appreciate. When exchange rate rises in equation 8.1, it is the case of exchange rate appreciation, while when it falls, it is the case of depreciation. Thus, the way changes in exchange rate are explained depends on whether equation 8.1 or 8.2 is used. In any case, changes in exchange rate in form of depreciation and appreciation occur due to the forces of demand and supply of foreign currency. When demand for foreign currency is higher than supply, it will mount upward pressure on the exchange rate at which domestic currency is exchanged for a unit of foreign currency, and this will make foreign currency become scarcer relative to domestic currency, and hence more domestic currency will be required for a unit of foreign currency. When supply of foreign currency is more than demand, it means that there are unused foreign currency. With this, owners of foreign currency will be willing to dispense with it at a lower rate, implying that a few domestic currencies will be required in exchange for a unit of foreign currency. Therefore, if inflow of foreign currency is higher than outflow, tendencies are that exchange rate will fall, thus leading to exchange rate appreciation. But in other words, any country whose foreign reserve is higher or whose export proceed is very strong in the world market will have its domestic currency very strong in relation to its trading partner. We now know the reason why crude oil proceed in Nigeria tends to drive Nigeria's exchange rate. Exchange rate devaluation and revaluation. In some cases, the government of a given country may deliberately reduce the value of its currency relative to its trading partner. When this is the case, we say that exchange rate has been devalued. If the government deliberately raises its currency relative to the trading partners, the exchange rate is revalued. In 1986, Nigeria deliberately devalued its exchange rate with respect to US dollars and British pound sterling. The argument for supporting devaluation was that strong naira against dollar and British pound made Nigeria's export product expensive in America and Europe, and that this was one important reason why some exportable product cannot enter world market. For the first few years that devaluation was adopted, export rose significantly but eventually fell. This implies that devaluation appears to be a short-term rather than long-term policy strategy. This outcome is not far-fetched if we think of the interaction between goods flow and capital flow. While devaluation may benefit goods flow, it will also benefit capital flow, and as foreign capital flows in, it forces exchange rates to appreciate. The appreciation will in turn make import cheaper and export dearer, with final outcome of reduction in net export proceeds. It appears therefore that devaluation and appreciation work the same way, while revaluation and appreciation also work the same way. But depreciation occurs through foreign market mechanism, while devaluation and revaluation is government's foreign exchange policy instrument. Types of exchange rate. There are basically 5 types of exchange rate, namely nominal exchange rate, real exchange rate, nominal effective exchange rate, real effective exchange rate, and cross exchange rate. In what follows, we shall explain each one and examine their use. Nominal exchange rate. Nominal exchange rate is the rate of exchange of one currency for another that prevails in the foreign exchange market at a given period of time. It is the price of one currency in terms of another without considering the purchasing power of the currency. Changes in the nominal exchange rate implies depreciation or appreciation of the currency. Nominal exchange rate does not show information about how competitive the country is in the foreign exchange market. Real exchange rate. Real exchange rate measures the purchasing power of the domestic currency. It is the nominal exchange rate adjusted for relative prices between countries under consideration. Real exchange rate is usually expressed in index form. The formula for computing real exchange rate is given by real exchange rate equals NER multiplied by PH over PF, where PH and PF are price level of home country and foreign currency respectively. Equation 8.3 says that real exchange rate can be computed as the product of nominal exchange rate and relative price level. In the case of Nigeria and the United States, Nigeria's real exchange rate becomes real exchange rate of Nigeria equals nominal exchange of Nigeria multiplied by price of N, that is Naira, divided by price of the US dollars. Clearly, real exchange rate is determined by 3 components: nominal exchange rate, price in the home country, and price in the foreign country. If PF rises while PH and NER stay put, real exchange rate will fall, and falling real exchange rate means real exchange rate appreciation. On the other hand, increase in the general price level in Nigeria will raise its real exchange rate and reduces the value of the exchange rate. Nominal effective exchange rate. In real life, a particular country trades with many countries. Thus, it will be narrow to consider just a foreign country in isolation of others. Nigeria, for instance, trades with virtually all countries of the world, while each of the countries also trade with other countries. In other words, each country trading with others have their respective exchange rates, and these must be taken into consideration when computing exchange rate. The effective exchange rate, therefore, is a measure of whether or not the currency of a country is appreciating or depreciating against the weighted average of foreign currencies. For instance, consider a case where UK's trade with US, Germany at 30 and 70% respectively. To compute UK's effective exchange rate, we attach 0.3 bilateral exchange rate indexes to dollars and 0.7 to euro. Therefore, nominal effective exchange rate is the weighted average of the nominal exchange rate against the currency of the trading partners. Generally, nominal effective exchange rate is a multilateral rate of exchange rather than bilateral rate. The formula for computing effective exchange rate is the summation of the nominal exchange rate of the weighted exchange rate. Real effective exchange rate. Effective exchange rate provides a reasonable measure of changes in a country's competitive position for some period. However, NEER does not consider the important influencing price movement. Thus, it does not show how the level of competitiveness is being affected by purchasing power. REER particularly fills this gap. The formula for computing real effective exchange rate is real effective exchange rate equals nominal effective exchange rate multiplied by PH divided by PF. Cross exchange rate. Cross exchange rate expresses exchange rate in terms of the relationship between bilateral rates. For instance, assume a two bilateral rates like US dollars and Nigeria and UK pounds and US dollars. To compute Nigeria's cross exchange rate, we use the formula cross exchange rate equals Naira divided by dollars divided by pounds divided by dollars. Characteristics of the exchange rate market. Foreign exchange trading takes place in many financial centers, with the largest volume of trading occurring in such major cities as London, New York, Tokyo, Frankfurt, and Singapore. The worldwide volume of foreign exchange trading is enormous, and it has skyrocketed in recent years. In 1989, the average total value of global foreign exchange trading was over $129 billion per day, of which 187 billions were traded daily in London, 129 billion in New York, $115 billion in Tokyo. In 1998, the daily global value of foreign exchange trading had increased sharply to around $1.7 trillion. In 2006, this value had risen by more than 60%. However, as from 2008, the value has declined sharply due to the impact of the global recession. However, recent development in international communication technology has made each country to be part of a single world exchange rate on which the sun never sets. For instance, the Nigerian Stock Exchange market, economic news released at any time of the day is immediately received, and this may set off a fury of activities by market participants. Foreign exchange traders may deal from their homes when at late night communication in a financial center on another continent. For example, the difference between the Naira and dollar quoted in New York at say 10 a.m. and the Naira and dollar exchange rate quoted on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange can take place at the same time. If Naira was selling for say 0.2 in New York, while it sells for 100 in Nigerian Stock Exchange, profit will be made through arbitrage. Arbitrage is the process of buying a currency cheap and selling it there. Going by our example, a trader could buy 10 million Naira in New York at 0.2 and sell the same immediately in Nigeria at 100. This will yield a pure profit of 10 million naira. This is made possible by the power of information communication technology. Another type of arbitrage is called cross-currency arbitrage. These occurs when the rate of exchange of two or more currencies among themselves differ. For example, if 275 naira is exchanged from £1 and 135 naira is exchanged for $1, and dollar to pound is 20, instead of exchanging for 275 for a pound, an arbitrator will only need to exchange 270 for dollars and then $2 for a pound, so that at the end 5 naira gain is arbitraged. However, if all traders try to cash in on the opportunity, their demand for naira in New York would drive up the dollar price of naira, and the supply of naira in Nigeria would drive down the dollar price of naira. An arbitrage opportunity declines because the difference in exchange rate will eventually disappear. Therefore, arbitrage opportunities are very small and short-lived. Spot and forward exchange rate. Spot exchange rate occurs when two parties agree at an exchange of bank deposit and execute the deal immediately. Thus, the example we gave on arbitraging was actually a spot exchange rate. Previously, such exchange rate does not in real life occur on the spot, as the term suggests. In fact, such exchange takes 1 or 2 days for the deal to become effective. Such deals are always attributed to times taken for payment instructions to be cleared through the banking system. These days, due to the development in information communication technology, the lag has been reduced to as most a day. Foreign exchange deals sometimes specify a value date further away than 2 days. In this case, it may take 30 days, 90 days, or a year, or even several years. This type of exchange rate is called forward exchange rate. To demonstrate forward exchange rate, assuming that in June 5, two parties to a spot exchange of $10,000 for 140,000 naira, on the 4th of July, the forward exchange is therefore 140 per dollar. This is a 30-day forward exchange rate, and it is different from spot exchange because irrespective of what the market exchange for naira to dollar is in 4th of July, the parties will have to settle for 140 for a dollar. Also, this 30 days exchange agreement differs from 90 days or 1 year agreement in the sense that after 30 days, the party can agree on another exchange rate. Besides, the party can agree on another exchange rate value for different duration. In particular, when an American agrees to sell dollars for naira on a future date at a forward rate agreed today, the American has sold dollars forward and bought naira forward. Why should parties agree on forward exchange rate? Think of a Nigerian importer importing computers from the US. Assuming that the Nigerian knows that in 30 days he must pay to the American supplier for a shipment arriving, the Nigerian can sell each computer for 140,000 naira and must pay his supplier $1,000 per computer. His profit thus depends on the naira dollar exchange rate. If the spot exchange rate is 120 naira, then the importer will pay 120 naira times 1,000, which equals 120,000 naira per computer, making a profit of 20,000 naira per computer imported. But the importer will not have the fund to pay the supplier until the computers arrive and are sold. If over the next 30 days the naira unexpectedly depreciated to say 150 naira per dollar, the Nigerian importer will have to pay 150 naira times 1,000, which will equal 150,000 naira per computer, and incurs a loss of 10,000 naira on each computer imported. In order to hedge the risk, the importer can make a 30-day forward exchange rate deal with his bank. If the bank agrees to sell naira to the importer in 30 days at the rate of 130 naira, the importer will assuredly pay 130,000 naira for $1,000 per computer imported. By buying naira and selling dollar forward, the importer is guaranteed a profit of 10,000 naira per computer imported and is insured against the possibility of sudden exchange rate changes. Thus, forward exchange rate is used to hedge against exchange rate fluctuations. Types of exchange rate market. There are two extremes in this case. The first extreme is called official exchange rate. The second extreme is the unofficial exchange rate market. The official exchange rate market has legal backing, and there are regulations guiding the operators in the market. The participation is usually carried out by the monetary authority. Official exchange rate market sells and buys foreign assets in bulk. In the case of non-official exchange rate market, there are no regulations guiding the participants in the market. A deregulated foreign exchange market is also called a liberalized foreign exchange market. In Nigeria, an example of non-official foreign exchange market was the free fund market after 1966, which allows private individuals or firms to hold and exchange foreign currency freely. Foreign exchange regime, on the other hand, is a type of foreign exchange adopted by a particular country at a particular period. There are specifically two extremes. These are fixed exchange rate and floating exchange rate. Fixed exchange rate occurs when the monetary authority intervenes in the foreign exchange market by ensuring that the demand and supply of foreign assets do not alter the predetermined exchange rate. In the 1960s and 1970s, Nigeria adopted this type of exchange rate regime. Floating exchange rate. Floating exchange rate regime is a period when the authority deliberately hands off from intervening in the exchange rate market. Thus, floating exchange rate is allowed to be determined by the prevailing market conditions. This type of exchange rate exists in the developed countries. The third type of exchange rate regime is the managed floating. In this case, the authority's intervention is not so deliberately active. The authority will only intervene when the behavior of foreign exchange rate determined by market mechanisms tend to adversely affect macroeconomic goals. The present foreign exchange rate in Nigeria is managed foreign exchange mechanism. Summary. In this study session, you have learned that an exchange rate is the price of one currency in exchange for another. Exchange rate plays a role in spending decision because it enables us to translate different countries' prices into comparable terms. All things being equal, a depreciation in a country's currency against foreign currencies makes its export cheaper and import dearer. An appreciation of its currency makes its export more expensive and its import cheaper. Arbitrageurs in foreign exchange market take advantage of disparity in exchange rates. Arbitrage opportunities are short-lived due to attractiveness and pressure on demand and supply. There are many exchange rate regimes, among which are fixed exchange rate, floating exchange rate, and managed floating exchange rate. This is the end of study session 8. Thanks for listening.